Welcome to the RockStar In Life podcast, where you learn the secrets to unleashing your inner rock star so you can make the world your stage. What's up, RockStars In Life? It's Siri Shakti, and today I have my awesome co-host joining me,
Dr. Dan.
Today we have a great show planned for you guys, and I love this name that my husband came up with called Take a Mind Dump.
Yep. Insert the sound file right there, right?
Nice, yes.
The sound effect.
So what is this all about, Dan? Take a mind dump. Can you help explain that to our audience?
Yeah, this is something that's really been, it's one of the tools that I utilize like every single day. You know, I do quite a few of these things like every single day, but man, this is one that I use constantly. And just today we were actually using it ourselves, both you and myself.
Yep, I was.
And what it really means is, you know, first off, your brain isn't meant to store every single idea, thought, decision, you know, your hopes, your dreams, you know, like every single thing in your mind that you can just keep going in circles and circles, which I call looping, which we'll get into in a second, because we have so much information being thrown at us, you know, every single day, every single minute. And I mean, it's just getting crazier and crazier. Like I actually read something like, oh man, how long ago was this? It's like a couple years ago I heard this. There was some stat that said something like, we process more information in 30 days than our ancestors processed in their entire lifetime just 100 short years ago.
Wow.
Let that sink in. So just for you guys, for those of you that have ADD that saw a squirrel while I was saying that, like myself, I'm like, wait, what did that mean? Basically, 100 years ago, our ancestors, in their entire lifetime that they lived, they didn't process as much information that we do in just 30 short days. And this is like a couple years ago I heard this stat. So I'm guessing today's day and age, we're probably processing more in a week, maybe even less than they did their entire lifetime. Isn't that just, and we're not talking about the internet, of course. Yeah, they didn't have the internet. Well, I mean like anything, like not just the internet, but just like all the information, because the internet and people and just everybody, there's so much stuff being thrown at us. I mean, like back then in those days, you had to go out of your cave or your hut, or, you know, I'm sure they weren't in caves 100 years ago. Some people, but you know, you'd still have to go out of your house or wherever you were in your village or you know, in your neighborhood, in your town, to actually go talk to somebody. But I mean, I don't know about you, but today I had at least, and you know, by what, like noon, I had probably like, you know, 50 text messages, and I had like maybe 100 emails, and man, and everywhere else, you know, like the kids and everybody else like throwing stuff at us. So there was so much going on. It's insane.
Yeah. That reminds me of one of my favorite shows, Downton Abbey, how, before, at the beginning of the show, they didn't have televisions. Like they were just being introduced to like electricity. Excuse me, not televisions, like telephones. Is that what I said?
I don't know.
Oh, whatever.
So. I saw a squirrel.
Anyways, whatever. They didn't have telephones yet. And I remember they would write a letter and give it to their servant, and they would send it out. And then you had to be patient to get your reply back. And now, just like you were saying, Dan, we send a message and we get a response back like immediately. And we're pretty impatient in that way.
I bet back then they were probably overwhelmed too. They were like, oh my God, Martha, I've had 3 telegrams in the last 3 months. I can't handle all this information at me.
Right. It sounds that's overwhelming. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and again, so the power of brain dumping, I mean, first off, it helps you make some really cool decisions and gets it out of your brain, out of your head, so you don't loop and go in circles. But, you know, it also it gives you the ability to focus on new things and deal with, you know, stuff that you have to deal with right now, because you're getting it out of your head. And that, you know, that constantly is taking up bandwidth. You know, that you could be focusing on other things in your life, whether it's spending time with your family or doing something fun or filling yourself up. I mean, or coming up with new ideas, you know, because if it's kind of like a glass, right? If you fill it up with water and you have it like full and it's constantly overflowing, you can't put more into it because it's constantly overflowing. So, but imagine if you got, 10 other glasses, cups, and you took that water that was overflowing and you started dumping it all into other cups too. And now you're kind of spreading it out. And as your cup gets a little fuller, you just put it into a new cup, into a new cup, and you just keep going and going and going. And then, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You're really freeing up space so that new ideas, fresh ideas can come to you. And then it also alleviates that feeling of feeling like, oh gosh, because I felt it before, where there's just so much information, so many things you have to remember or ideas swarming up in your head that you feel overwhelmed and even to the point of feeling stuck because there's just too much for your mind to handle.
Yeah. I mean, have you ever had, and I'm talking to the audience here, those of you that are listening, have you ever had a time where you had to make a decision or you wanted to make a decision or you had an idea or you had something that you wanted to do in your life, but you just didn't know where to start or which decision to make? And you got so overwhelmed or really stressed out about it. And you started saying things like, I don't know what to do. I just don't know what to do. I'm so confused. I just don't know what to do. I don't know where to start. Why does this have to be so hard? Why can't things just be easy? Right? I mean,
Right.
I don't know. Maybe that's never happened to you guys.
I'd bet that it's happened to everyone. It's happened to everyone.
Yeah. If you're being honest, that was a joke, guys.
Yes.
So. I don't know anybody that's never happened to. So if you're being
Right.
honest with yourself, which I hope you are.
Yes.
Now I know for me, I'll fall into this trap, and I still will, and I just kind of remind myself, I'll go through this loop where it's just looping and looping. And again, hopefully that makes sense because, in my head, and looping doesn't necessarily have to be that, it's repeating in my head this thought or this idea or this decision I'm trying to make, that it's like, trying to go through my head like every single minute or so. I mean, sometimes it does, but other times it could be like over the course of a day. So one day I'm thinking about it. Then the next day I'm thinking about the same thing. And then the next day I'm thinking about the same, or sometimes I forget about it for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or a month. And then it comes up again. So it's taking up bandwidth because it's looping because I haven't got it out of my head yet.
Yes.
That's why it's important to get out of your head and you start to train your brain. You train your brain to go, you know what? Oh, this is important, so let me go ahead and write this down and then I'll go ahead and not think about it until I need to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's super, super important, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. And I even think of it in terms because one thing that I encounter a lot is I come to a point in my life where something is not fitting well anymore. Maybe it's like a way I'm dealing with something in my life or, whatever, some life habit that I have that I want to change. And I will loop in my head of all different ideas of how I could change it. But it's that, like you were saying, it's that feeling of overload. There's too many ideas coming through that I end up feeling like stuck because I'm kind of lost within the different options. And so this idea of brain dumping helps you to get it all out. So then you can kind of sit back and look at all the different options and say, okay, now it's a little more clear,
Yeah.
And then you can start taking steps and get clear of what it is that you want to start doing and creating.
Do you want to give them like an example of something recently that you were coming up with?
Well, it's funny that we're talking about this because just this morning I had that experience.
What? Seriously? You had it happen recently?
Like just a few hours ago. Okay.
That was a joke. Sarcasm. I was there.
So yes, you were.
And this is why we're having this episode because we had this today. I was like, hey, that'd be a good one.
Yes.
Let's do it.
Well, my wonderful husband, he's so loving. I was having a little breakdown this morning. We woke up and right away this was swarming in my head. And what it is that for a few weeks now, I've been kind of coming to this tipping point where I'm just not satisfied with the flow of the household. And for me, I take that as mainly my responsibility because the kids are home all the time with our homeschooling. I kind of organize how the house runs. And I'm just not happy with how it's going. I feel like I end up doing all the housework. We don't have like a certain schedule for everything. So it kind of came to that tipping point that, it all came to, what is the word? Fruition? Am I saying that right?
Fruition?
Yeah,
if you've got a speech impediment, fruition.
Okay.
Fruition.
How
or
is
if
it
you're
pronounced?
a 2-year-old or 3-year-old. Fruition, mama. What is fruition?
All right.
Fruitation, isn't it?
I'm going to lean across this table and slap you, right?
Isn't it fruitation?
It is absolutely not fruitation. All right. Okay,
It's the tation of
You know
fruit.
what? We are done with this part of the conversation. Moving on.
Nice.
All right. It came to a tipping point. That's how I will explain this situation. So Dan told me, which I've done many times, just, sit down, get it on paper. So I ended up grabbing my journal and I just started putting all the different ideas on paper. And what happened, and this has happened other times that I've done this technique, is suddenly ideas were coming out of my head that I hadn't even thought of before, of how I could make things work better in the house. And also things came out on paper that I didn't even realize were important for me to get things going better. And just to kind of give you a few ideas, one of them was, to have a daily chore list, especially because our kids are home all the time doing their work, to make sure that they have a responsibility in the house each day of chores they are going to be doing. The other thing was have a specific time to do our homeschooling, because I have a tendency to be a lot more fluid. I've always kind of been that way. I just like to go with the flow, but that doesn't always work when you have 3 kids and a lot to get done.
No, then you have some major looping going on.
Yes.
And I have another word for that too. What's the other word I use?
Mental.
Yeah.
Do I have to say it?
I don't know. Let's take a vote. Should she say? Yeah, go for it. What do I call it?
Mental masturbation.
Yes, because it exhausts you, and
Yes.
that tends. I don't really use it as much with you or whatever. It's usually in business that I bring this up when, I'm
Right.
talking to my partners or something, or we're coming up with some ideas, and then they keep bringing, stuff up that at that point. And it's a little bit different too, because it has to do with stuff in the future. Like, oh, what are we going to do in a year from now with this? And I'm like, that might not even, we might not even do that. Or we don't even know if that's going to be, if that project's even to be completed,
Right.
or if we're going to want to do that in a year. So why even bother?
Yeah.
Great. You want to like write down some notes and send me an email, go for it. But there's no reason that we're going to spend an hour or 2 hours, talking about this if it might never happen,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather talk about TV shows or movies or something, or what's going on,
Yes.
some fun stuff, tell some jokes. So that's what I mean by that. No, by the way, I looked up your word for you, and it's fruition.
That's it.
Fruition. What a weird word.
That's a hard one for me to say. My tongue doesn't want to work like that. Fruition. Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, you got a new word. That's the word of today. The word of the
I'm
day.
going to find ways to use that word today.
Nice. I don't know if you noticed, but I was about to say it, and I was like, I might mess it up.
So it's not fruitation? Is that what you said? Something like that?
Yeah, I said fruitation. Actually, I Googled fruitation or something, and it came up with some applesauce drink or something. So
Nice.
yeah, I don't think it was that, bringing it to that. So
Yeah. Well, I just want to say one more thing about my experience this morning is that God, that took me maybe 15 minutes to write everything down.
And you were stressing about that for days and hours.
A few weeks, actually.
Well, a few weeks off and on.
Yeah. But then the past few days, especially, I was really feeling the pressure of it. And so it took me 15 minutes. I wrote down my top ones that I want to do. And then tonight we're going to have a little...
What do you mean by top ones?
Oh, top things that I want to happen on a daily basis in the house that...
So some like bullet points.
Bullet
of
points,
some ideas
yeah.
and thoughts. And so it's just getting it out of your head. And we're going to give you guys some ideas. So that's coming up. We're not just going to talk about this and leave you hanging and have you wondering how do you do it?
No, but I mean, it's just a perfect example because I felt like instantly I started to feel at ease and I felt more empowered because suddenly I saw that there was options, not just one or no options.
Yeah. And I'll go into that in a second
Yeah.
as well. But I know for me, I had, I'll talk about a recent example, and then I'll talk about a bigger example from not that long ago, just a few short years ago. But for me, just today's podcast, and this also goes for, products as well. Like when I'm coming up with product ideas or courses or anything like that in our business, one thing with the podcast was, for the last, I think 2 days, I was kind of stressing well, what's the next topic going to be? What's the next topic going to be? And then once I was like, okay, I'm looping, sometimes it takes me a whole day to catch myself, because the mind is kind of tricky like that. It goes, no, this is different, so you got to kind of catch yourself. And the important thing is, as long as you do catch yourself, and, it doesn't matter if it takes a day, 2 days, or whatever, as long as you do it and then get better at it.
Right.
And, so we were like, I don't know what to do. And then you start going, oh, why don't I just mind dump this? So, brain dump, mind dump. So I grab a piece of paper and just start writing down a couple ideas, and instantly, once you write down 3 or 4 ideas, you're like, oh, there you go. Which one do you want to do? And then you narrow it down to 2. Sometimes you'll know right away. Sometimes you'll narrow it down to 2, and then you can pick the one. And you're like, oh, perfect. So that happened for us actually today, and I was kind of stressing about it yesterday. So, once I sat down and did it, that's a huge difference. Now, the other thing was something that happened to me, a few years ago, and you might have remembered it from one of the past episodes, if you listen to that one, where I talked about how I was in the real estate market, in the industry, and I was, mortgage loans and doing real estate investing and stuff like that. And I just wasn't satisfied anymore. I didn't want to do that anymore. It didn't fill me up. I knew that there was something else out there for me, and I was searching for that. Well, the ideal thing would have been for me to still have done that part-time, bring in some income from that still, and then figure out what it is I wanted to do. But the industry, tanked at that point. The whole market was crashing, and this is 2006, 2007, 2008. So I had no other choice. I really couldn't get back because, it went from, me knowing, probably let's say I had hundreds of friends and people, acquaintances and people I knew that were in the industry, whether it be mortgages and, including your mom. Your mom was doing that well, your brother as well.
So many of our friends.
Yeah. And they actually worked in the same office as me. And, a lot of those people all of a sudden, had to leave as well because it dried up. Mm-hmm. They couldn't do it anymore. So I would say at least 95% of the people I knew had to leave because it wasn't the same as it was anymore. So I had no choice, really to do that anymore. So it was kind of, the decision was made for me, which is great because I didn't want to do it anymore anyways. Yeah. But I was stressed because we're like, okay, what are we going to do for money? I have no idea. What am I going to do? And I was stressing and stressing and stressing. And, I had some money saved up, but I knew that was going to eventually go away if you don't have any new money coming in. So,
yeah. And I think, wasn't I pregnant with our 3rd child too?
With Bodhi?
I think I was.
Yeah.
During that time.
Were you already pregnant or did you just give birth? I can't remember if, yeah. Yeah,
it was kind
pregnant.
Of, I was pregnant. Yeah, because I remember thinking you were having to try to figure out that next step. And here we had another baby coming, which, increases that pressure, that stress.
Yeah. So I had written down quite a few things, and I'll give you an example of how I went through that process and how I continue to do that today. But man, I was sitting there going, well, I guess I could do this and I guess I could do that, and feeling really stressed. Now, I'll tell you, if you only write down, or if you're only thinking in your head, which is even worse, but even if you wrote it down and you just write down one idea, one decision, then you do not have a decision. So if you write down on a piece of paper, well, I guess I can do this one thing, then you have no decision really, because it's only one thing. You have no options. If you write down 2 things, now you got a dilemma, which is just going to stress you out because now you're like, oh, which one should I take? If I take this one, what about this one? You're just going to go back and forth and you're going to be all stressed out. Now, if you have 3 or more, starting at 3, now you have some real options.
Yeah.
So it's important and this is what I did, it's important for you to write down every single thing that comes to mind. A mind dump, a brain dump, no matter how good or how bad it sounds. I mean, obviously I wouldn't say like, oh, I'll sell my body for money or whatever, but but there are things that I wrote down that I knew I didn't want to do, but it opened me up for more ideas. And I just kept writing and writing. And I was like, oh, I'll start a jewelry business. I'll start an underwear line. I don't know. Do you remember I was talking about
I forgot about that.
I still want to do that. My idea was I wanted to bring like underoos for adults. And I think somebody did that after that, but it's from now to then. But yeah, so I wanted to do a lot because there was no fun underwear, And so I was coming up with all these ideas and I was writing down and I was like, oh, I'll design jewelry, for men, and I'll do all these other things.
Talked about designing clothes even.
Designing clothes, because I used to love buying clothes and jewelry at that time for men. And so I was writing down all these ideas. And if I didn't do that, number one, it wouldn't have got me out of my head and allowed me to get where I am today. It actually led me to where I am today. Yeah. One decision, led me to another decision that led me to another decision that led me to today. So it might not be the first thing that you write down or the first decision you make. So if you write down, let's say, 5 or 10 ideas and things that you could do for that one, decision you're trying to make or you're trying to, go towards. And out of that list, none of those things, I mean, as long as you choose one of them though, that one thing that you chose might not be the thing that actually led you to where you need to be. But, or I should actually rephrase that. It's not the direct thing. It's not the number one. You might have chose one out of there like, oh, I'm going to be a car salesman. Well, you might have became a car salesman and that wasn't what you wanted to do, but it led you to where you want to be now.
Yes.
And that's what's important. You got to move forward. You can't sit there and hide in the shower in the corner, rocking yourself, crying, or anything
or
like
if
that.
you find yourself in the shower, rocking yourself and crying, then get yourself up and forgive yourself and keep going forward.
Exactly.
Sure, we've all had those moments.
Exactly. Yeah. Did you have anything else you wanted to give an example on that before I jumped into the...
Well, I did want to say that, when I think how I reflect or, basically how I like to look at a brain dump is that for me, when I'm going to do this, this morning was a little different because I just did it like in bed real quick. But usually I like to find a place with no distractions. I've even gone as far as like sitting on the beach and by myself and writing or sitting at a nice park outside. And, so that way it's my own space, my own time. And I encourage you to, this is really like a time to really just free write. This is a time where you want to just get all your ideas, just like you were saying, Dan, all your dreams, all your desires. I mean, this can be like your loftiest visions just on paper, even if it seems silly. Don't judge yourself because in this expression of just getting it out, that's when some you may surprise yourself. I mean, you'll write something down. You're like, I didn't even realize that was important to me, or I didn't even realize I had a desire to do that.
Yep. Yep, exactly.
Or I didn't even know that was an option.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out is that it's important that for some major decisions and things that you really want to sit down with, it's better to just start. Start writing stuff down. So like, going to the beach, but that doesn't mean that you need to wait until you go like, oh, well, I can't go until, 2 days from now. So I'll wait. No, start writing now.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point.
And then schedule the time to go to the beach and get deeper into that.
Yeah. And actually, now that you just said that, the times that I have taken that time to go sit at the beach and stuff like that, it was more like when I was wanting some quiet time to really focus on like the ultimate vision of my life and brain dump that type of experience.
Totally.
But but there's been many times I've just sat down at the kitchen table or in my backyard or
go in the closet, if it's loud and you're just like, I need to get away for a second. But it's important to get it on paper, or to get it out of your head, I should say, because I'm going to give some examples of ways you can do this, and it's not just paper. So we'll talk about that in a second. But, just getting it out of your head and onto something, whether it be paper or, on your computer or your phone or whatever you're using, can get you to a clear picture and make a decision a lot easier and a lot better and a lot faster, and then just, get you on your path to where you need to be. Now, another thing I want to mention before I start talking about that is, something I had spoken about before too, is like, I think we talked about this in the, what was it? Creating a, what do we call it? We talked about quite a few things so far, but the daily practice.
Oh, yes.
Where we talked about like how I won't talk on the phone too late at night, because then I'm in my head as well. And this kind of goes into that as well, is when you've got decisions or things that you're thinking of, and it's late at night, what I do is I don't just grab my phone or grab a piece of paper and just start writing down a bunch of ideas. Yeah, sometimes I do. But a lot of the times, if it's something that can wait and I know it can wait, then I won't sit there and just start letting my head go and just start writing a bunch of stuff, and then I'll be all wired because I have all these ideas. Instead, I kind of put it on a shelf. I imagine there's this imaginary shelf up on the up on our wall, and I'll put it in a box. I'll put those ideas in an imaginary box, and I'll put it up on that shelf, and I'll leave it there for tomorrow. And I say, you know what? Don't worry, brain. I'm going to put it up. I'm going to put it in this box, put it on the shelf, and then tomorrow morning we will go and look through it and solve this stuff.
Yeah.
And start writing down some ideas. So by doing that, that allows me to actually fall asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Otherwise you
helps
get too
you to
wired.
Disconnect from having to figure everything out in that moment at bedtime.
Totally. Because a lot of people don't know this, and actually you never met me. Never met me. You didn't know me when I used to have sleeping problems. Falling asleep.
I didn't know you had sleeping problems.
No, you see me like just close my eyes and I'm usually asleep. Like 99% of the time I fall right asleep.
Yeah.
And when I was, a teenager and younger, I would stay up all times of the night. I could not fall asleep. My brain was always going a mile a minute, and I would like spend till like 2, 3 in the morning. I wouldn't be able to fall asleep. So by doing these things, it's allowed me to go to sleep, which is awesome. So, So let's talk about, things that we use and give you some ideas, give you some real useful tools here instead of just talking about this stuff and then you having to figure it out. Now, first off, I still write on paper and pen. There is a case to be made. I've heard this before, and I do believe in this, that when there's a different mind,
or it accesses different parts of the brain when you're writing compared to when you're typing.
Yeah. So that creativity, it does tap in differently if you are writing it by hand opposed to typing it on a computer or on your phone or anything like that. Now, does that mean that I don't use the computer or my phone? No, that doesn't. It just means that sometimes, especially for me, I need to go back and forth. I go back and forth all the time. But I will say that one thing I don't like, that I used to use journals. And, like a journal or a binder with like all the pages inside, that you'd have to tear apart if you wanted to get a page out. And the reason I stopped using a journal is because it felt like I had to be too committed, to that idea when I put it on paper. Because think about it, when you're writing on that page, you can't really remove that page without ripping it out. And then where are you going to put it to keep organized? It ain't going to happen. And not even that, but I had all these different journals. And then I'd have like notes and ideas from events I went to or networking, or I was listening to something and I was like, oh, a note, or I was reading a book and I got an idea. And I used to always write, in those journals. And to be honest, I think years later, I go through my old journals, just kind of like reminisce, but I don't like go to them for stuff I wrote. 'Cause
Yeah.
you can't find it.
Totally. I could see that being a challenge because you think about it, you're writing down all these great notes and information, but it's not really organized unless you're sitting there every few pages putting those little tabs, which that would take forever, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah. Forget about it. And
little
then
tabs with little notes.
and then once you have like 100 ideas or things written down, forget about that too. I
Yeah.
mean, so like, and that was another thing is you can't really search, for that stuff without having to go through tons and tons of notes to find one idea.
Right.
And also another thing I don't like about paper and pen or pencil is that it's not easy to move stuff around. So like, just like these notes for this podcast, I have all these line by line by line, like bullets of stuff so I can keep my flow and not be too all over the place. Yeah.
Right.
You're listening right. Right now, how we're talking is actually in a flow, right?
Yes, it is in a flow.
Imagine if I didn't take notes, we would be all over the place.
Yeah, that would be fun for them.
The end would be in the beginning. The beginning would be somewhere in the middle. The middle wouldn't even exist. It would be
We'd probably
backwards.
be talking for like 3 hours.
I'd be talking backwards probably. But yeah, so as far as you can't move things around. So like if you write something, because my brain, when I write stuff, a lot of times I don't write in order. I write like maybe I have an idea, and that idea should have been like almost the last thing on that page. Well, how do you move that? You can't unless you're going to use like a pencil and erase and keep writing and moving stuff around. But paper and pen definitely has its place still. So what I like to use is I like to use printer paper, right? Because we have it and we don't even print that much stuff. I mean, you do for the homeschooling. I don't
Right.
really print much stuff, but except for like these notes and stuff that we kind of need, but we already have it and I can draw on it. I can write on it. I don't have to be committed to like a line or something. I mean, yeah, if you like lined paper, that's totally fine. But I like writing on just blank, with no lines, printer paper. And I just write ideas down. I'll go in my backyard, I'll be out to lunch or something and I'll just like write and write and write, or I'll be in the restroom writing in there. And I just love to write. And then what I do is I have vanilla folders. Those vanilla folders. Is there another name for that besides vanilla folder? I've always called
them that.
All right. So
We're
vanilla
going
folder.
with that.
Yeah. And I'll write like on there, like for instance, this one for the podcast notes, I wrote podcast and I keep all my notes in there. So then that way they're all in one place. And if I have a product idea, I have a vanilla folder that says products or product ideas or course ideas or something like that. And then if it's a particular product, like after it goes from idea to mapping out exactly what I want to, what it is, then I'll actually, if it's a yoga course, I'll name it yoga course. And then I'll put all those notes in there. So I'm organized and I can carry those around with me. Now, I don't write all my notes in there. Those are just my ideas. I like to write ideas on that because sometimes you don't have paper with you, right? And also, like I said, you can't move stuff around. So that's just to get it out of my brain a lot of the times. Sometimes I even skip the paper and the pen and I don't even do that. I just go straight to, the tools that I use. But the reason I want to bring that up is because there are times I have to use paper and pen because it's the only time you have no distractions. I mean, how many times have you opened up the computer if you've tried to take notes on there and you get like text messages if you have your your messenger on your computer and also Facebook messages, then
Notifications.
Yeah. And then you're like, you want to check your emails. Oh, I'm just going to check my emails real quick, or and then you're like, oh, well, let me check out these YouTube cat videos. They look really funny, or fails of the week and seeing people like fall and get hurt. And you just like laughing about that stuff. Or you're tempted to see what's going on with your 5,000 Facebook friends that you don't really even know, but you're Facebook friends. So you want to see it's important. You want to see what's going on in their life,
Oh my God. This makes me laugh because when I was working on notes for this podcast, I think maybe 6 times I ended up going on to another website. I was like, oh, I want to learn some exercises to improve my eyesight. I'll just take a little break, which ended up taking me like 20 minutes. And then I'm like,
yeah.
I found this cool doctor that knows these other exercises. I'll check him out on YouTube.
No, totally. That's why it's important that you can just shut everything down,
Yeah.
put your phone on, do not disturb, or night shift mode or not night shift. That's to make it like a yellowish, but to like turn it off. So that way you're, airplane or do not disturb. So that way it goes straight to voicemail and you don't get those distractions. And then you can just focus with pen and paper, and you can just focus on taking a nice long mind dump.
Yeah.
Now,
do you ever take your written notes and then go back to the computer and type them there ever, or?
Okay. So what I do with that is I use the paper and pen to get ideas. And then what I do is I'll grab a computer and I'll explain which actual tools I use to do that. But yeah, I'll actually start writing it out so I won't commit. Well, I'll write. It depends on how much time I'm committing to writing in the paper and pen. But once I do, then I have them in front of me. And yes, I grab the computer and I start typing everything out, because now I can put it in order. I'll just type it all out and then I'll just start moving stuff around.
Yeah.
I'll move stuff around. Like I'll just copy and paste, put this higher up, put this down below, and move it around. Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So some of the tools that I used to use is and I'm sure some of you guys probably have done this as well, is I used to use Word docs. I know you still do this sometimes, Siri Shakti. Like you'll write like in a text document or a Word document, or
I do it
or
all
Apple
the time.
Pages. Yeah, you still do it.
Like every day.
I'm getting her to stop doing that. But okay, so here's why I don't like doing that, is because the notepad or any of those things like on your computer or on your phone, they're on your hard drive or it's on your phone. So in order to update it or add anything to it, you have to be at that computer. And yeah, I know that Apple does have like their cloud thing now where you can keep it on, multiple devices. But again, there's times that, that either it won't sync correctly, or you'll have a duplicate of it, or you'll forget exactly where you put it. So that's why I don't like using those things. And especially like another thing I used to do, and I know you've done this before, and sometimes I still do, but like email yourself notes.
Oh my God. I'm so famous for doing that.
Yeah.
And then you know what? Same thing with like the journaling. It's all unorganized. Like they're all over my computer.
Yeah. Once you send it to yourself, you're never going to find it again, or you're never going to look for it again. So I do that myself still, but only if it's a reminder for tomorrow. I have reminders I set, and I have other things that I do on the calendar, but sometimes I'm just like, hey, like I'm thinking about buying a product or something, or, a piece of software, and I will email it to myself just so I can take a look at it tomorrow. Because, bookmarking it or putting it somewhere else. And there's another software called Pocket that's really cool at kind of like bookmarking things and being able to search for them. I use that, but it doesn't remind me to look at it tomorrow, or at least it might, but I have to go in there and play with the settings, and it's just easier to email myself, that thing. But another thing too is, so you can stay organized and you can search for ideas and notes and things like that. My favorite is the cloud. And some people, I don't know, do you even understand what the cloud is or no?
I always just think of it as like they're just floating around in the clouds.
That's exactly what it is. I couldn't have said it better myself. Wow.
I should give a presentation about how much I know about the cloud.
It's in the cloud. It's in the cloud. Where is it? In the cloud.
Please enlighten us.
Well, it actually reminds me of the movie Rocky. It actually wasn't, it's not the movie The Rocky, but it was actually the Creed, the last one that he did.
I love that.
And Rocky had written up like a workout plan, a training plan for Creed's son. And what was his name? Adonis, I think it was.
Yeah.
Adonis. And he wrote it up, and then he goes, "Here you go." And he was handing it to him, and Adonis took a photo of it. And then Rocky's like, "Do you want this? Are you going to take this?" And he goes, "No, I got it." He's like, "I got it in the cloud." And then Rocky's like, "The cloud?" And then looks up in the sky. Like, is it up there? Well, basically the cloud just means that it's not stored locally, meaning on your own phone or computer or whatever. It's somewhere else that can be accessed in other places. That's all the cloud means. So it's not really the cloud. It really is. It's on a server still.
Right. Okay.
It's on some hard drive somewhere, or on some drive somewhere.
Yeah.
But it's just not on yours. You can access it.
So it's not like taking up space on your computer then?
Correct.
Okay.
Now, obviously, I don't want to get too deep into that because it still can take up space if you are using something like Dropbox or Google Drive, which I had to figure out the hard way, because if you set up their app, then it also stores it locally on your computer as well and in the cloud. Because I remember I was like, why am I losing space on my computer? I have this in Dropbox, and I didn't get it at first, and I had nobody explained it. I had to kind of figure it out, like, oh, that's why.
Got it.
So you actually have to be careful if you use those apps, and you use like the app for your desktop. It can actually take up space if you don't set like which folders you want to show only on your computer. That's like an instruction thing. So that's a tutorial that we could spend some time on explaining. But my favorite is the cloud. I used to use something called Evernote, but it had syncing issues, and sometimes I'd end up with like duplicates and things like that. I don't know if it's gotten any better because it's been a while since I've been using it that much. I still use it sometimes for certain things, but that's only because I've used it in the past and I have it already set up. Trello is also another good one that's good for certain things like organizing projects. And there's some other advanced tools out there, but it is pretty simple to use. It's called Trello, and you can use it to like collaborate with other people or your team and stuff like that. But my favorite to use that I probably use like 99% of the time is Google Drive.
Yeah.
I love it because Google, out of anybody or any service I've ever used, you can collaborate with somebody. Like right now I have, today's episode notes on Google Drive, and you can actually from your computer, you can log in to Google Drive that I've shared with you, this drive, this folder, and you can go and you can actually start typing on that document.
Yep.
And I will see you typing on the document.
Yeah.
Which is insane because like everything else, like Evernote and the other ones that I've seen, I won't see you typing out, and it'll a lot of times cause syncing issues. Like all of a sudden your version is a little different than mine, and I'm like, oh man, and it'll like give you an error or something. So I've seen that happen a lot. Maybe some have gotten better, but Google Drive is definitely a lot easier.
Yeah. So this is my first time really, because I know you've been telling me about Google Drive for a while, and it wasn't until we got started in our podcast that I started accessing it because you were sharing information with me, and I am loving it. I love sharing information with you. If there's something I need to find that you've uploaded there, I can just go on there and find it, like piece of cake. And you can create, like everything is divided so nicely. Like you have folders where you keep everything. And
you have to create the folders.
Well, yeah, but it's really easy.
So like you can create one folder called like Mind Dump. And that's, like what we're talking about. And that's where you throw all your ideas into. You would create Google Docs. It's a Google document. Think of it as like a Word document. You create a Google document in there. Don't throw in there a Word doc. Like don't create something on your computer and then just drop it in there. Instead, go into Google Drive and then you create a new, file in there and make it a Google Doc, or they even have like their version. I forgot what it's called. But they have their version of like a, CSV Excel type, sheet or whatever you call it. They have their own thing they call it. I don't know what they call it, but
okay.
So you can do that as well. And if you do it that way, then it's easy to collaborate back and forth because you can write on it. So creating a Google Doc, and then like one we have, for example, is in there is I created a folder, and the folder's called Siri Shakti.
Wow.
Yep.
That's a cool folder.
Siri Shakti folder. And that's the one that I share with my wife. So anything that we need to collab on, I put in there because then it's organized, opposed to what some people do is they'll create like a document and then they'll just like share that one document, with somebody that they need to collab with a lot. And then it gets just so disorganized. So you want to share that folder with that person or persons, so that way anything you put in there, they can access as well.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So we have a folder inside of that folder that's called like podcast. And then inside there is like podcast notes, episode notes, topic notes is one. Then we also have like another one that's called like images that we can use for the site or for whatever we want to use. And then I also even have one that I called like tutorials. And then I created a document, and then I put like links in there for her to watch, like either YouTube videos that somebody else has made or a video I made to like kind of explain how to do certain things that, you know, she can go through. And I do this for myself too. So if there's something that I know I'm not going to remember later on, I'll put in, you know, tutorials that other people have made, like, oh, here's how you set up a podcast. You know, I'll put in a link there, or I'll put in there like, oh, here's the podcasting course on how to do stuff that I paid for. And I'll put a link to that members area, and I'll put the username and password there too. So my wife can access it too. So if she ever needs to go in there, she can access that.
As you're talking about this, I'm seeing so clearly how this could be such a great tool for brain dump, because, you know, you create your folder in Google Drive that is called brain dump, and that's just the general idea, right? Folder, and in there you can, you know, do your brain dump, and then, you know, you can separate it into other categories. Like, you know, when you get everything on paper, you can divide it into, you know, the different topics that you've written out.
Yeah. For me, what works best is I'll create one document and I'll name it, you know, mind dump.
Okay.
Right. And then that one document, I'll just write down a bunch of ideas, bullet by bullet by bullet by bullet.
Okay.
And then from there, then if I'm like, ooh, I want to move forward, or I want to come up with more ideas, then I might take that, and then I'll take that one bullet or that one idea, and then I'll create a whole new document in that folder still, mind dump, and then I'll name it whatever that idea was.
Yes.
And then I'll continue from there.
Writing about that one bullet.
Now, that's not every time do I do that. I mean, sometimes I'm like, you know, ready to just like write down a bunch of stuff. So what I'll do is, if that's the case, then sometimes I'm like, I'm not even creating a new one. I'm still writing on that one mind dump and just writing under that one idea and just going nuts on it. Because like it's all coming to me, and I'm like, I'm just like writing it all out because, you know, it's all coming to me. And then I'll copy it over and paste it into its own document, still in the mind document, into the mind dump document.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
I also do that with bookmarks too. Like there's quite a few times like you bookmark things and it's just so disorganized that, like, you know, inside, you know, like I have a folder that I call like resources and tutorials. And I'll put in like products in there that I'm thinking about buying, or that I come across and I'm like, you know, this might be kind of cool to use or to take a look at for something in the future. So then I'll create a new document and name it like things to look at later or something like that. And I'll put links in there and maybe a little description of what it is, because you could always go back and check it out. And, you know, a lot of this stuff, all this stuff can be searched in the Google Drive as well. So just make sure you remember, you know, like, or write down enough notes for you to be able to find it later, you know?
Yeah.
Little things like that. So, I mean, this is, the other thing I do too is if it's like something that I want to remember how to do, or if I'm taking notes on a course or how to do something, you know, like a video I saw, I can take screenshots, and whether you use your own computer or, you know, the built-in screenshot thing that they have, or I use Snagit. You know, Snagit's an awesome tool to take screenshots, and I use that. And what I do is I'll take screenshots and I'll copy that image, and then I'll paste it on that page of that tutorial or whatever notes I'm writing down, because now I have a visual.
Yeah,
So
I love Snagit. I use it all the time to take screenshots of images and different things. And I actually used it just this Christmas when I made my Christmas cards.
Oh yeah. I use it all the time. I'll draw like arrows and, you know, and descriptions of like, here's how you do this. If my parents are like, oh, I can't figure out how to do this, I'm like, hold on. And I'll like take a screenshot and then throw some arrows and then send it to them, or I'll make a video or something like that. But, you know, I mean, you could put these all inside of a document, or inside of one document, or in a folder. You know, just think about how you can organize these things. And then that way it'll just be less for you to have to think about later.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. So I know we're getting close to doing our RockStar mission, but I just wanted to add something before we wrap this up, that in reflecting on this topic, I really, really encourage you to use this tool, to, you know, use this in your daily life and whenever you feel like you need it, because the truth is that we really have our answers within us. But oftentimes we're just not seeing it because we're overloaded, overwhelmed with too many ideas. Maybe we have things swarming in our head with all the responsibilities that we have in our day-to-day lives. And so when you just take the time to get it out of you and on paper, you are going to be just amazed and surprised to see that you know exactly how to take care of the things in your life and how to figure out your path.
Yep. So. To make room for the things that really matter.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. Yeah.
Finding solutions.
Exactly. All right. Well, before we get into the Rockstar mission for today, we are going to remind you to go to rockstarinlife.com to get, all the links and resources mentioned in this episode, to grab this episode's transcript, download my free books, training, yoga, meditation, homeschooling advice, and so much more that are being added every single week. So you want to go to
rockstarinlife.com and join the Rockstar in Life revolution today.
I love it. Yes. All right. So you ready for your Rockstar mission, everybody?
Woohoo! They're ready.
Siri Shakti is. I'm feeling it.
I'm doing it. Yes.
All right. So here's what you're going to do. Write down 3 or more decisions that you've been putting off or haven't decided on because it just feels too stressful. You've just been putting it off and you're like, oh, later, someday, I don't know. I'm just so confused or whatever it might be. Okay. Now, to start, of those 3 or more decisions you've been putting off, choose one of those, just one, that you finally want to make a decision on today. Okay. So choose that one. Now, from that one, I want you to write down at least 3 options. More is better, but start by at least writing 3 options down, 3, paths that you can take, and just keep writing. Write as many, just no matter how bad they or good they sound, just write them down. Because you remember, you got one idea or one option and you have no decision, right?
Right.
There's no options, right? You got 2, now you got a dilemma. You got 3, now we're starting to get somewhere. Now you actually have a decision you can make, right?
Yes.
So write down at least 3 or more of those options, like I said. Now, if it's a big life decision, like let's say that you're deciding, whether or not that your marriage is working or a relationship
or moving to a new location,
moving
your
to
family
a new country or state or something like that. Or if you're thinking about quitting your job and telling your boss to shove that job because you want to pursue your life dream of running a flea circus,
Ooh.
then you need to write more than just a couple ideas. Okay. In that case, you're going to have to write down like some pluses and minuses, and bring some other people in on this decision as well. But, in the case of a marriage or relationship, you might want to go, or I would recommend going to see a marriage counselor or something like that. So don't just sit there and write, oh, here's my 4 ideas that Dr. Dan told me to do. And now I'm doing it. Sorry, honey, I'm leaving. I wrote down my 4 or my 3, and this is the one I'm choosing, right? So Take a little longer on that. But the important thing is to get it out of your head and start writing some stuff down, because you know what? As long as it's not one of those big life decisions and you're just jumping in on it, you might choose the wrong decision or the wrong path, right? And it might lead you to the right one. Okay. Yeah. So, obviously, like I said, if it's one of those big life decisions, be careful with that, obviously, but get it out of your head and start writing it down. And with those other decisions that are not of the crazy, life and death or marriage or anything like that, this will allow you to take you towards your path to where you need to be.
Yes.
So even if it is marriage, well, one of the decisions is, go speak to a marriage counselor, or it is about your job. Seek advice from people you want to be like, somebody that owns a flea circus, or not a flea circus, but if that's what your goal is. But if you want to start a business, talk to the people that own a business similar to what you want to do. If they're an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you're thinking of doing, speak to those people. And if they're not your friends, either hire them or find a way that you can reach out to them and talk to them. Okay. That's the important thing to do, right?
That's right. Yes.
Now, the next step after that, after you've made that decision and you start taking action on it, doing whatever it needs to be done to do it now, right? Is to repeat this process with the remaining things on your list, and chunk it up. Don't do it all tonight. I mean, that'd be great, but maybe choose one a day or one a week that you're going to you know what? One a week is a heck of a lot better than what you've probably been doing, which has been, looping in your head and stressing yourself out for the last couple of weeks or months or years, right?
Yeah.
So I think once a week or even once a month would be better than that.
Yes, I am agreeing. So.
I love it. So don't let the overwhelm monster get you. Chunk it up. Do like one of those a day or one of those a week or one of those a month, right?
Yeah. And you'll really begin to see how there's this opening in your life, I mean, as you begin to get clear and getting things out of your head and just finding that clarity of what it is that you want and how to make that happen.
I love it. So that's it.
All right. Well, this was awesome, guys. And, please, if you need any help with this, please don't hesitate to send us a message. We love to hear from you guys.
All right, everybody. This was awesome. I'm so glad we got to, to talk about this. And this is something that's definitely, dear to me and something that's very important that's allowed me to get where I am today and made me the person I am today and got me out of my own head, because I probably would have been in a padded room if I didn't learn this lesson early on. Right?
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
Me too.
Yeah, totally. All right, everybody. Remember to be a rock star in your life.
And make the world your stage.
Thanks for listening to RockStar In Life, your source for unleashing your inner rock star. For more tips, training, and free stuff, be sure to go to rockstarinlife.com and join the RockStar In Life revolution today. Thanks again, and don't forget to make the world your stage.